Professional wrestling has long been criticized as being chock full of misogyny and sexism, but history has shown that the industry can be a surprisingly inclusive place. Men and women have been fighting each other in the ring for decades now, and there have been plenty of cases where women have fought for and won men's championships, and vice versa. So this week, in no particular order, for good and for bad, I present to you 8 gender-defying championship wins. Number 8. Harvey Wippleman, WWF Women's Champion. By the year 2000, Women's Champion the Cat was the master of wrestling in stuff. Wrestling in water, wrestling in mud, wrestling in gravy, you name it, just anywhere but an actual ring. On the January 30th edition of Raw, the former Miss Kitty defended her title in the snow, a Lumberjill Snow Bunny match to be precise. Little was known about her mysterious opponent, Hervina, who rose up to the challenge and claimed the title, but ace reporter Michael Cole quickly sniffed out the ruse.
You're not Hervina, I know your voice. You're Harvey Wippleman!
Yes, it was longtime manager and agent Harvey Wippleman the entire time, becoming the first and only man to win the WWF Women's Championship. And speaking of records, he promptly lost it in record time to Jacqueline on SmackDown later that week. Well, that was a glorious waste of time. It's hard to believe that was one of the more normal things associated with the Attitude Era. Number 7. So many women, so little time. The WWF Hardcore Championship. The WWF Hardcore title changed hands hundreds of times during the era of the 24/7 rule, sometimes with more than a dozen title changes in a single night. During the championship's most frenetic period, a handful of women managed to hold the championship. Between 2000 and 2002, Trish Stratus, Terry Runnels, Mighty Molly, and an unnamed Godfather Ho had all been champs, though only for seconds at a time. This does not include the time when Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe fought for the title while in drag. It's a very different case here. Number 6. The DDT Pro Ironman Heavy Metalweight Championship. You thought the 24/7 rule was wacky in the WWF? The Ironman Heavy Metalweight Championship has that beat by a country mile. The IHC was created back in 2000 for DDT Pro Wrestling, a company out of Japan that's not afraid to dabble in comedy. Since its creation, the belt has changed hands more than 1,000 times and has been held by a handful of women in the process, including Laura James, Scarlett Bordeaux, cheerleader Melissa, Taya Valkyrie, and more. The championship's also been held by a blow-up doll, a dog, 3 separate ladders, and the belt itself. Truly, this is the most inclusive championship in all of wrestling. There are no boundaries as to who can win it. Number 5. Eric Young, TNA Knockouts Tag Team Champion. In late 2011, TNA stalwart Eric Young began teaming with the brassy ODB, developing an on-screen relationship. On an episode of Impact in March of 2012, the duo defeated Gail Kim and Madison Rayne to become the new Knockout Tag Team Champions. Then they got married a few weeks later. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset. The title victory was the zenith of what was ultimately a comedy angle, although I challenge the title's value was negatively impacted since, well, the belts hadn't been around long enough to establish much of a value to begin with. Over time, Young and ODB stopped defending the titles as EY went on to fight for the honor of TNA in their war with Aces and Eights. In 2013, Knockouts executive Brooke Hogan stripped the two of the belts because, shocker, Young was a man, before the titles were deactivated entirely. It took them 478 days to figure out that Eric Young didn't qualify as a knockout, and fans get defensive whenever people accuse TNA management of being incompetent? Number 4. Kyoko Inouye, WEW World Tag Team and 6-Man Tag Team Champion. Kyoko Inouye, a legendary Joshi wrestler, is a badass in the ring and has waged wars with some of the biggest names in the sport, both past and present. The founder of a couple of Japanese women's wrestling leagues, Inouye has also won dozens of titles in her career. While working for FMW in the year 2000, Inouye won the WEW World Tag Team titles with Koto Fuyuki, making her the first female to win a man's championship in Japan. Later that year, she would add to her resume by winning the WEW 6-Man Tag Team Championships on 2 occasions, with her teammates Fuyuki and Chocoball Mukai, a wrestler/porn star. Forget that pretender Val Venus, this guy actually lived the gimmick. Number 3. Jacqueline, WWE Cruiserweight Champion. In the spring of 2004, Chavo Guerrero Jr. was on top of the world, having successfully defended his Cruiserweight Championship at WrestleMania 20 and working alongside his father, Chavo Sr. On an episode of SmackDown in May of that year, Chavito issued an open challenge to his title, and former women's champ Jacqueline answered the call. Everyone was surprised, even Tony Chimmel.
And making her way to the ring, Jacqueline!
All fun and games, of course, until Jacqueline pulled off the upset and won the belt. It was a questionable reign at best. Jacqueline wasn't really on TV much before or after her time with the title, so really, nothing was gained. Chavo went on to win the belt back from her and hold it a few more times before losing it to Hornswoggle. Then the belt died. But despite that, nothing can take away Jacqueline's accomplishment of being the first female to win the Cruiserweight Championship. Well, WWE's version at least. Number 2. Medusa, WCW Cruiserweight Champion. For a time, Medusa's biggest claim to fame in WCW was when she threw the WWF Women's Championship into a wastebasket on an episode of Nitro. But after taking a 2-year hiatus from wrestling, the former Alundra Blaze had one more memorable moment up her sleeve, when she defeated Evan Courageous for the Cruiserweight title at Starrcade 1999. She would go on to lose the belt 1 month later to an overweight, non-wrestling Bad Jim Ross impersonator. Be that as it may, it was a feel-good moment for Medusa and her fans, and historical as well. She became the first female competitor to win a male championship in WCW, even though this accomplishment felt mighty similar to something that happened in another company just months prior. And the number 1 gender-defying championship reign is Chyna, WWF Intercontinental Champion. This is by far the most prominent and high-profile example of a woman winning a man's championship, and for good reason. When it comes to women wrestlers, especially in America, Chyna shattered the mold and set the standard for other women in the business. Chyna spent a couple of years as the mostly mute bodyguard of Triple H, but eventually became a star in her own right by 1999. She was briefly the number 1 contender to Steve Austin's WWF Championship, then began a rivalry with Jeff Jarrett over the IC belt. The multi-month feud ended at No Mercy in October, when she beat Double J for the prestigious title, making her the first and only woman to do so. She would even hold it a second time in 2000. Think of it this way, the last person before Chyna to use intergender wrestling as a gimmick was Andy Kaufman. It was meant to be a sideshow, but Chyna's foray into wrestling men was taken very seriously and she became a huge star. So much so, in fact, the company gave her one of their most prestigious titles, which is no small feat. It was such a big deal that WCW replicated the whole thing with Medusa just a few months later. As one of the biggest stars of the Attitude Era, there are few American female wrestlers who made as big an impact on the industry as the late Joanie Laurer. Her winning the IC title at the height of her popularity is the biggest example of inclusiveness in professional wrestling. Got any other entries for this list? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.